Welcome to the Conditions for Recovery podcast. I'm George, a specialist pain physiotherapist and coach. If you live with chronic illness, you'll probably relate to how easy it is to get lost in hopelessness, whether it's from healthcare appointments which lead to more questions than answers, the endless stream of despair content online, or just not knowing how to navigate the world when your symptoms aren't helping. Today's guest is Darrell Price. I first encountered Darrell on LinkedIn, where his evident mission to support others living with chronic pain immediately resonated with me. Darrell's story is one of significant turnaround. He spent years running a business, a career fueled by his strong identity relating to his ability to work, until chronic back pain forced him to stop everything. What I find most inspirational about Darrell is his transition from that point of loss to becoming an expert patient. Rather than looking at pain through a purely clinical lens, Darrell, with the help and support of a wonderful social prescriber called Karen, focused on manageable, self-led lifestyle changes from nutrition to sleep to the simple, repeatable power of a daily walk. Today, he has turned that personal mindset change into purpose, running peer support groups and pain management courses. He is a phenomenal example of how lived experience can be a bridge to a better understanding of how to increase quality of life, and I'm really looking forward to discussing his approach to moving forward with long-term conditions. Hi Darrell, thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, George. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great, good morning. So I've obviously done a bit of a introduction, but for people who don't know who you are, could you share a little bit more about your story and how you've ended up where you are today?
Yeah, prior to my pain condition, shall I say, I've run my own business for 20 plus years, a business I love with a passion, work 7 days a week, which probably contributed to my condition, and I've really loved it with a passion. My back pain started around 2015, but as you do, you've got bills to pay, you just take some more tablets and some more tablets and some more tablets, and that's just how things progress, to be honest. I got to a point where I had 8 alarms on my phone to remind me to take the tablets just to continue working, paying the bills, and it was a case of, if I didn't have the tablets within 30 seconds of that alarm, bang, my pain just wiped me out, to be honest. And everything came to a head around end of September, beginning of October 2022, and it just felt as though somebody had hit me in my lower back where the spine and hip area is with the biggest sledgehammer that you could ever wish. And after that, I didn't even know if I was going to walk again. I'd no understanding of it, no idea, and all was in my mind was, how soon can I get rid of this and get back to work? Because I just could not work, could not do anything physical. I was in a situation of, it just felt as though nothing was taking it away. I was going to the doctors. I got a fantastic practice nurse. I'd occasionally see GPs. I'd see the practice nurse quite regular. She was wonderful and supported me. GPs gave me ever stronger painkillers and ever stronger and this, that and other. And it just got so frustrating, George, to be honest. I've never really taken tablets in my life, and to be on, I was on a concoction of cocodamol, naproxen, amitriptyline, gabapentin, squeezing in a few things I shouldn't do, just to try and get rid of the pain, because that's all you want to do. You want to get rid of the pain, never mind about thinking of living with it. And it was just debilitating, and I got, my mental health went through the floor. Lack of sleep, mental health, it's a double whammy. And I got to a situation where I was diagnosed severely depressed, severely anxious, severe anxiety, I couldn't get an X-ray, couldn't get an MRI scan, which caused me even more stress and stuff like that, because I actually come from an engineering background, and my brain from 16 years old has been taught there's a problem, what is it, what can we do, how do we fix it, and if we can't fix it, how do we adapt? And I was blocked at not knowing exactly what it was, and I even booked to go private, which it was a bit of a game changer, that one. I went to see the practice nurse. I says, forget everything. I says, I'm going private, and she pulled a few strings for me, thankfully, and got to see a doctor. Got referred for an emergency MRI scan, and within a very short period of time, I found out what it was. I've got degenerative discs, I've got flattened pads, I've got nerve damage around that area, L5 disc area, and it was just it felt like an endless journey of pain tablets, pain tablets, pain tablets. Everything came to a head 1st of April 2023, Saturday night, 9:30. I'm sat at home on my laptop, and all of a sudden I felt a bit of a tingle this side of my head, right hand side. Next, what's this? Next thing, another tingle into my eye, and then all of a sudden it started tingling, coming down right hand side of my face, and I'm thinking, my goodness, you know what it is. But I was in complete denial, because all the information that you see online about strokes and things and everything, it goes down the left hand side apparently, but it doesn't. This went into my ear, down my neck, everything. And because how can I say, because I thought, no, it's right hand side, it's not a stroke, I phoned 111, is it, I think, and talked with them, and I could do all what they said. I could do the coordination, I could do the push pull and things. So I'm like, it's not a stroke, it's not a stroke. And they said a doctor will get back to you within an hour, and that was at 10 o'clock. 2:30 that morning, I'd still not heard back. I went to bed 99.999% certain I wasn't going to wake up.
Crikey.
And I looked at my dad's photo and I said, I could really do with some help here, Pops. And put my head on the pillow, and that was it. And I woke up next day. First thing was like, oh, I've had a result then. and that was it. Everything went off, ended up in the hospital, MRI scans, everything. I consider myself fortunate, to be honest, George, that there's no scarring on my brain. I've not been left with no physical or mental impairment, but I really do have to pace myself, and I really do have to be careful of not overdoing it, both physically and mentally, because I get physical and mental wipeout. It's challenging at times, because I've also had added complications in my lower back. I've now got a bulging disc that, when my back does flare up, and it does regular, it's the bulging disc is pressing on the nerves that go to my legs, and my legs start trembling when I stand up. I found this out in the middle of town in Chesterfield, where I live. I was walking somewhere, and all of a sudden I thought my legs started trembling. I actually thought there was a tremor going off, and I leant against a wall, and I'm looking about wondering what's happening, and I thought, no, it's not. And then I tried walking again, and it happened again, and I was like stood there for 30-40 minutes waiting. And as I say, I had an emergency MRI scan after that, and that was, as I say, added complications of the bulging disc on nerves in my around the spinal cord. So all fun and games, George, all fun and games at times.
Absolutely. That is one hell of a journey, isn't it? I think there's a few things that I want to revisit. So the first one is, when you were getting the medication and not really finding that it was helping significantly, and you were escalating and you were increasing your regimen. How were you feeling in terms of, did you still feel, oh, well, they just need to find the right combination, the right cocktail of medication to improve this? When did you start feeling, actually, this might not be the whole picture?
I'll be honest, and from a lot of people that I talk to about pain and in the pain support group I run, all you want is the silver bullet that's going to take it away, and it's going to take it away forever. If you have to spend the rest of your life taking a couple of painkillers a day, that doesn't matter, that's fine, so long as you can get back to your normal life and do whatever you want to do. Because pain is chronic pain is greatly misunderstood by people who don't suffer from it. For me, it's like, how do you explain pain? I've had people say to me, well, you look fit and healthy, and what's wrong with you? And I'll just say to them, I actually ask them to describe the colour of pain, and they look at me gone out, and I'll say, yeah, that's your understanding. My life before pain was, I was at the gym 4 times a week, even doing spinning classes, which I loved. I got a brilliant life. I got a great standard of living, and it would just bang, everything came to a halt around the 1st of October 2022. It was just like the sliding doors you go through and you're in another world.
How do you, like, you mentioned before that you had quite a profound deterioration in your mental health and your anxiety, and the Darrell that I've met is not the same Darrell that was in that period of time. So how do you feel that things began to move in a more positive direction?
As you mentioned in the intro, I was blessed to meet an amazing social prescriber, Karen. They're attached in the UK, well, England, they're attached to the surgeries. And we met in her office a couple of times. I got referred to her by the wonderful practice nurse, and we met and we talked, and she drew a picture of a square, and she says, you're in that square, you're in that box, you're banging your head against every single part of that, looking for that crack of light. And I said to her, says, yes, that's exactly me. And I knew then that she understood me. And after that, we never ever met in her office. We'd go on a what was ably named walk and talk, and we'd go for gentle walks because I couldn't do much walking. Most mornings I would wake up and wonder if I could even walk that day. And at 100%, if I woke up and I was laid on my back, I knew I was crawling about for the rest of the day. And but we went local country park, we went for coffee, and Karen just gently got me to open up, to be honest. Really, really did, because I was in a really dark place, And it was just, and I said to her, I says, what's your trick? She says, what do you mean? I says, I spoke to you like never ever before. No one ever before. And that started turning things around. And there was a particular day I was ranting about no pain support groups, no nothing. All you get is the clinical route. And I've always worked in teams, and I've always understood the power of a team and individual support. And I said, there's no support groups, there's nothing. I'd Googled Chesterfield, I'd Googled pain support groups in Derbyshire, South Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire. I was willing to travel, George. And it was, and just the throwaway line, she said to me, well, why don't you start one then? And I'll never forget it. It was, what, me? And it was like the imposter syndrome kicked in then. And I said to Karen, I says, what, there's me in front of a group of people, and there's some professor here who knows everything about the theory of pain and all this, that, and other, is all these letters. And she said the immortal words to me that change things. And she says, yes, but you are living their lives. And I just said, right, let's do it. And that's when things started to change, George.
And I think there's something so profoundly important in this, which is something that we touched on when we had a chat recently about the fact that so many people that I work with, so many people that I speak to, they say, I don't want to go to that thing. I don't want to be just surrounded by a bunch of people who are trying to outcompete how dreadful they feel. And I don't want to be surrounded by loads of negativity. And I really think that what you said before, the kind of peer support is the only place that you can truly get understanding. And well,
Yeah, because in peer support, you're with one of the ladies in our group. She said it. She says it's great to be around people who understand our pain and who actually get it. It's how do you describe that? People getting it, you can't, but it's just that hidden understanding between two people in pain. It might be, there's quite a few ladies in our group who have fibromyalgia. Now, I've known absolutely nothing about fibromyalgia. I've since learned a bit about it, but one thing I do understand is that they're in pain, and I understand what pain feels like. And if I understand 5% of what they're in, there's that little understanding between us.
and I think one of the difficulties is that as a society, both in terms of healthcare interactions, but also more generally, people don't have a very good understanding of long-term conditions. They feel like everything should get better with treatment, or you're unlucky and it doesn't. But everything should be manageable by a very kind of medical approach. And actually, that is not really the case with persistent pain. It's not that we just add another intervention or another medication and that makes it go away. Yeah, sure, there are some people who actually do experience that, but the amount of people that I've met who are having a really great time just kind of popping the pills and that's it, and that's keeping everything under wraps, is negligibly small. And I think that the understanding, because ultimately there's that commonality, isn't there, is that ultimately whether you've got persistent low back pain or whether you've got fibromyalgia or whether you've got any other long-term conditions, there are recurrent themes that are feeling the loss and feeling that your world is
Yes,
narrowed.
100%, Joe, 100%. We have speakers come into our group, and one of the most powerful talks we've had was a lady who specialised in grief. And she came in, and there was some days we get 8 in our group, some days we get up to 30 because we operate like a drop-in. And the lady was talking about grief, and she's explaining how grief affects you and this, and that, and other. And I'll be honest, I was puzzled. And I said, can I ask a question? I said, what am I grieving? Because we all associate grief with the loss of a loved one, loss of a relationship, things like that. And she said to me, she says, you're grieving the life you've lost. And I was like, whoa, wow, that really, then the penny dropped. I've not had one big turnaround moment. It's been a compounding of several ones like that, to be honest, George.
I often think that this is the case, is people are looking for the one magic thing.
Yeah.
People come and tell me I'm really desperate to lose weight because I really believe that that's going to profoundly impact my pain, or I'm really keen to improve my sleep because I believe that's the answer to my pain. And I always say it's better to think of things as cumulative. People tend to have quite gradual downward spirals. It's often not a single catalyst that then changes their entire life. And sometimes they might not have recognized it until it feels like everything's dropped. But it's the same. I think people can spiral up as well as down. And it's
Yes.
that domino effect. It's that sleep isn't going to fix your pain on its own, but it might fix the way that you feel generally. It might fix your energy for other things. It might fix your how you feel you're managing your whole life, which then has a domino effect into something else. And so something that seemed insurmountable before that thing improved now feels a little bit more manageable. Now there's a little bit more wiggle room. And I think it's what you said. It's there is never one big major thing that fixes everything. It's always a kind of combined total of one's efforts in various different
Yeah,
areas.
100%, George. It's like what you mentioned with sleep. We've had a chronic fatigue. We have different speakers come in. We've had nutritionists come in. We've had chronic fatigue specialists come in. We've had hypnotherapists. We've had yesterday we had the lead social prescriber do a talk around mental health and anxiety and stress and how that triggers pain and little things. He gave 5 things to try to help combat that. But around the sleep, I mean, sleep is the biggest thing that is the hidden knock-on effect from living with chronic pain. And we had when the sleep specialist come in, she's a chronic fatigue specialist. We had a really good talk around that, and then we all started talking about stuff and ways that we could wind his brain down at night. And you hear about it, everybody says, oh, do a sleep nighttime routine and this and that and other. You hear it and it just goes over a lot of people's heads. But when you start doing the simple things like screens off at an hour and a half before bed, a cup of herbal tea, some chill out music, things like that, it really, really does work. One of the girls in our group, she did it. She suffers from fibromyalgia and she really struggled with her sleep. And we meet 2 weekly, and when we meet the following meeting, I'll do a 15-minute recap. And she said, I've tried the sleep routine, what we created, and nothing happened the first five nights. And she says, and then on the 6th night, she got to sleep an hour earlier. Didn't help her stop her sleep all night, but she got to sleep an hour earlier. And then the same the next night, and the same the next night, and I said to her, I said, yeah, but just think of the compound effect. You're getting, in a week, you're getting an extra night's sleep. And I can now tell, just when she walks through the door, if she's doing the sleep routine or if she's not. And it's the little simple things that compound, George. Things like keeping your phone out your bedroom. I did an experiment before Christmas, and because I was having really bad sleep, waking up every hour and a half. And I thought, I'll just try this. Everybody says, keep your phone out your bedroom. And so I put mine in the hallway, and I shut my eyes, and next thing I know, it was 7 hours later, and I couldn't believe it. I thought it would be about an hour and a half. And I did it the next night, and I did it for 4 nights. Left the phone out the bedroom, got a decent night's sleep. Brought the phone, I thought, we'll just try this. And I brought the phone back in the bedroom, and immediately I started waking up again every hour and a half, 2 hours. And so now my phone is permanently in the hallway.
I think that's fascinating because, what's that actually about? Like, if your phone is on the opposite side of the room and you're not using it, yet it still has an impact on your ability to settle. And one of the things that I think is always interesting about the sleep stuff is that I actually think that all of these strategies, they need to be kind of personalized. So like for one person, it might be drinking the herbal tea, and for another person, it might be the bath. But actually, it's about integrating habits and behaviors throughout the whole day that
It is,
make you
it's 100%.
prepared for your sleep. And I think one of the places that people go wrong with slightly is when they go, well, I'm doing the cup of tea and I'm having a shower just before bed and I'm kind of thinking about how to optimally go to sleep, but only for 15, 20, 30 minutes before bedtime. And one of my
I set
colleagues,
alarms. I set an alarm on my phone and the alarm says screens off, and it's usually 90 minutes, but I will push it to 60 minutes if I've got things on. But after that, it's like laptop shut, phones put on a different place, stuff like that. And what you've just said about it, a cumulative set of habits. Through Karen, I was fortunate to be enough to be introduced to Live Well with Pain 10 Footsteps program. Karen had retrained in it as a practitioner, and that's been a game changer for me. And that's all about small lifestyle tweaks and adaptations, like nutrition, like sleep, like understanding how the pain works in your brain, and how your brain's works as a protection mode. And what else is there? Nutrition, exercise, dealing with acceptance, which is the biggest thing for me. Even as late as July last year, I still thought that I just might be able to get back to my old business. And I tried just hoovering my car out, and I felt fantastic doing it and looked great. And I got up the next day, and it took me 6 weeks to recover. And that was the final, as they say, nail in the coffin of thinking, right, I can get back to what I used to do. So then it was like double down on the lifestyle stuff. I try and walk each day, even if it's just a few minutes, 5 minutes. Gentle stretches, gentle exercise, nutrition I'm really keen on. Somebody mentioned to me anti-inflammatory foods, so I looked at them, Googled them, and I was surprised how many of them was near what I already eaten. So, I mean, I love cooking, so it's just a case of, right, like, what can we do? Them lifestyle changes have been a real benefit to me, to be honest, real benefit.
And when we've spoken before, I've said, well, I tend to avoid using the word acceptance unless somebody uses it first. Somebody who's living with pain uses it first, because I think people often equate acceptance with resignation. And actually, sometimes it's easier, I think, to think of acceptance as being a present thing. It's about recognizing the current situation you're in and trying to kind of optimize what you're doing for your well-being in the now. And it's never clear for most of the people that I work with where they're going to be in 5 years' time. But I think what is clear is that if they can't manage the things that they want to manage now, then part of the process is actually recognizing that rather than keeping fighting and struggling and suffering for it.
Yeah, one of the things in one of the footsteps when I was going through them, because I was fortunate enough to be allowed to retrain and do it, and I'm now a lived experience trainer with them. And in the early days, there's a line. It says, "What are 5 opportunities that you have had since you had your pain?" And when I first read that, my initial reaction was, "Are you having a laugh? Are you really having a laugh? What opportunities have I got? I've lost the business I love. I've lost the lifestyle I love. I've lost a social life because I didn't go out. I've lost this, lost that." There's not one thing. Now, I'll be honest, I could list probably 8 things that have been a real positive, and some, I mean, getting the chance to come on here is one. I've met some amazing people, and some of them was actually last week when I went into Leeds prison, looking to get the pain management in the justice system. And I've had some amazing experiences over the last 8-10 months. Once sort of like that acceptance kicked in, I spoke in front of 200 people, 150 people at a conference for 8-10 minutes, and never ever expected doing anything like that. I'm got the lived experience team are doing a talking slot at the Live Well with Pain conference next week, and it's the acceptance is, yeah, it's not, oh, I've got this for the rest of my life. For me, I've always tried to switch everything, not what can't I do, what can I try and switch it to what can I do, and or how can this be done. I've accepted that each day I have to have some rest period, some downtime. I've accepted that I can't physically do work. I've accepted that if I eat a lot of, let's just say, processed foods, that's going to trigger it. If I don't drink enough water, that tends to start affecting things. If I do too much, I know I'm going to be wiped out for anything up to 3-4 weeks, physically and mentally. And you learn to adapt, and what you can do, you learn to enjoy more and accept. And I'll be honest, I said it to somebody the other week, it could potentially have been the big statement, could potentially have been the best thing that's happened to me. Because I actually feel now what I'm doing is something I was meant to do.
I think this is really interesting, isn't it? Because what do you think specifically about your situation meant that you went from continuing to hope for the kind of simple linear silver bullet, continuing to kind of try and push to see whether you could return to what was happening, and then rather than going, okay, I've got nothing left and I'm not going to be able to do anything, what made you go, right, where do I find what I'm doing instead then? How do I make sure that I'm living the best version of my life that I can alongside this situation rather than just lying down to it?
Yeah, two things, to be honest. My life motto is 4 7 times, stand up 8. And I said to somebody the other week, which I'll come on to the second point, I said to somebody the other week, I says, yeah, everybody has setbacks in life, but it's how you react to them. This last time it's been a case of I've been down for a number of years, but I've still got back up. You never give up. You've got to get back up. And this lady asked me the question of, what's your motivation? Why are you doing this? Why are you so passionate about it? And I said to her, I said, because there was absolutely nothing there for me. And I don't want other people in pain be in the same situation. That's why I started the support group. That's why when I was offered the chance to retrain, I jumped at it and did it and love it and support the webinars. I work very closely with the social prescribers. Even yesterday I had a phone call from a lady who was not in my PCN area, but I met her at that conference I spoke at. She said, would you help me set up a pain support group in Derbyshire Dales? I said, yeah, I'd love to. You don't have to. I said, yeah, I would love to, because it's a case of, I know the lifestyle tweaks and adaptations from Live Well With Pain. I know they work. They've worked for me. They're not going to work straight away, but which a lot of people potentially misunderstand. As you've just said earlier, George, about people think, oh, if I get my sleep right, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, it's going to do other. It's not. It's a number of factors which work together and compound over a time. And as I say, what for me it was, I don't want people to be in the situation I was.
And I think the thing that really is interesting about your journey is that you're, in a lot of ways, you're doing the simple stuff really well. You're turning them into routine and habit, and that's been helpful. And I think I certainly find myself sometimes overcomplicating the work that I'm doing with people in pain. And it actually, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, the nutrition, the gentle movement, the sleep, all of that stuff, when integrated into a changed approach to your life, can be phenomenally helpful and can change how you feel about your life and can change how you feel about what possibilities and what opportunities are available to you. And you have grabbed that by the horns, by the sounds of things. And I think there are so many people who are feeling isolated with their pain and who are not finding the right support groups, are not finding the right peer.
You've just mentioned probably the biggest thing that I never saw, George, with people living with chronic pain: isolation. I never saw it. And when we started the pain support group up, a lot of the early members were from Karen, my social prescribers, work caseload, and other social prescribers. And there was people there that had never been out the house in 2 years. There were people who would not come out the house. One lady in a wheelchair never came out of her house. Now she comes to every single meeting. She loves the group, and we've recently got funding for chair-based exercises. She goes to them, works fantastic. I mean, we work with Chesterfield Football Club Community Trust, Andrea, and two guys there, and we have such a laugh, and to see her face, it's and Karen said something to me in the early days, and she says, "Do you see what you're doing?" I says, "What do you mean?" She says, "You're breaking down the isolation." I says, "I'll be honest, I couldn't see it, George, because I didn't know, and I didn't know that everybody else felt the same as me. Withdraw from society, withdraw from everything, stop your social life, stop this, stop that, stop other. You gradually pull back until you don't realise you're cocooned in that one room in your house or your flat like I was. And people was actually coming out of the house for the first time in 2 years. It's a very isolating condition. Very isolating condition. Last year I went with some friends on a social day, and it took me 6 weeks to prepare for that. And we went and I enjoyed it. And my situation is I can't wear hard-soled shoes for more than 2 hours, otherwise I'm in agony. And I came back after that. I knew I did my sleep right, I did my resting, I did my nutrition properly, I did stretching, I did all sorts. I really doubled down on it. And I came back and I woke up the next day and I thought, wow. I thought, yeah, I'm in a bit of pain, but not as much as I expected. And I actually felt then I could get a bit of my life back. If I just prepare properly, I can get a bit of my life back.
There's definitely something in this. I often talk to people about trying to be methodical in their approach to these things, and about the fact that you can't do things perfectly. There are times that things are worth the flare. You really love a band and you want to go
Yeah.
see them, and you know that you're going to suffer for it for a few days afterwards. Then sometimes it's worth that additional pain for something that was something that you really enjoy and that's enriched your life. But actually, when we do the simple things right most of the time, it's the kind of 80-20 rule that people
Yeah.
apply to all sorts of habit changes, is that if you do the sensible thing most of the time, then it actually potentially makes the times that you don't a bit easier to navigate. And I thought it was interesting what you were saying before, because you found that you reduced your social life and you became more isolated, and yet were still surprised that other people were. And it's because there's these kind of layers to isolation where people feel that they are alone in their pain, and that they are the only people, and you're the only person who's experiencing your experience of pain, but also there are commonalities in the impact that it has on people's lives. And I think one of the things that I was surprised about when we spoke in the past was the sheer amount of these peer support groups that there are where you are based, because
Yeah. Derbyshire, as to its credit, when the Live Well with Pain started rolling out, Derbyshire, is it ICB? I don't know. They grabbed the bull by the horns, and there's quite a lot of peer-to-peer pain support groups. Some there's only 2 or 3 or 4, but it doesn't matter. We can have anything up to 30, 35. We never know because we operate as a drop-in, but it doesn't matter. Everybody's welcome. There's no pressure to come every other week, but whether there's 2 or 3 or 33, it doesn't matter. Somebody is getting some form of help. And my passionate belief about peer-to-peer support is, I said it at the start, of the group, if there's 15 people in a group and they're all in pain, but they're all potentially doing something slightly different to each other to live the daily life, to manage the pain. And if somebody comes out with an idea that nobody else has thought of, and then they'll take that away and try it, and it helps them, well, that's everything achieved that you ever want.
yeah. And I mean, there is the challenge that there are people who very validly feel that the peer support spaces that they've tried to engage with have been what we spoke about before, the kind of everybody venting, everybody competing. And I think we spoke the other day about this, that actually that running groups is an art form, you know, like making sure that people are staying with the positive, fulfilling, enriching stuff and the stuff that's going to help them rather than just kind of wallowing is such a
Yeah,
challenging
you
thing to
have
do.
got to let people speak how they're feeling. You've got to make most people in pain will say, all we want to do and all we want is to be listened to.
Mm-hmm.
You will get that verbatim from people in my pain group. We don't feel listened to. No slight on anybody, but it's GPs of 10 minutes. They're under pressure. They're absolutely flat out. Everybody in the NHS is flat out. And this is why I think social prescribing is critical. I really do, because they get the time to sit and talk with people. And if you feel listened to, it gives you a lift. But you do have to let the people vent every so often, and there's no judgment because we all understand you might be having a bad pain day. And talking about potentially doom and gloom, we had some media students come up from Nottingham Trent University, and they did some interviews and some shooting and filming and things like that. And they came up to me afterwards and they said they're actually blown away because when they heard pain support groups, they expected it to be all doom and gloom. And they said, can't believe how positive and uplifting and supportive of each other everybody in the group is. I said, well, that's what we are.
And I think this is what, yeah, I think that venting is a necessary part of the process in the same way that grief is, in the same way that acceptance is. But it's also not helpful to be the only mode in which someone is operating in. You know, there
Yeah.
has to be some forward movement, there has to be some room for support and for change and some willingness to accept that support. Something that you said before, I was just wanting to revisit. Do you feel that GPs are actually the best positioned to support people with these? Because one of the problems that I often see is that the 10-minute thing, this is obviously not remotely a criticism of individual clinicians, it's about the system. But people who are experiencing persistent pain, there's always more going on than just what is happening at the kind of structural, the surface, the body level. And in a system where people have only 10 minutes, is that the right space to try and resolve that problem? Or should we be recognizing these things potentially earlier on and trying to get people into spaces where there is more time for exploration and more time for nuance and complexity?
Yeah, I have I'm on a patient participation group at my surgery, and I've got to understand how much pressure they are on behind the scenes, and I really do get why there's so much pressure on them. And as the initial port of call, yeah, it's your GP, but it's, for me, it needs to be, as you've just said, other avenues explored after that, where people have time to open up, they have time to discuss things. And as I say, I'll go back to some social prescribers. I think they are critical in my experience, for pain management. I know they have a lot of other issues to deal with and a lot of other patients, but for for me personally, it was. I remember an incident. I was going to an appointment with Karen one day, and I'm walking to the surgery. I'm in agony, and I'm thinking, what is the point of this? What's the actual point of this? What's the point of this appointment? What's the point of anything? You know, and I got there and had a cup of tea and was just chatting and talking and talking, and I came out of there 45 minutes later. I were in a different world, George, different world. And it was, I can still see it now. I know exactly what I was wearing that day and things like that. That's how stuck in my mind it is, that just having that opportunity to open up, to talk, to have somebody make you feel like you're listened to. As I say, GPs, they are vastly under pressure, and I have a lot of sympathy for them. Well, what I've gained from the understanding, it seems like the appointments, it's like they might be the poor girls on the reception, the brunt of it, and they're not the ones who's deciding how many appointments there are, and it's just sort of like a service that is needed for, I don't know how to word this, George. You see your GP initially, and then there needs to be follow-on referral programs. That's how I feel.
Yeah, and I think, as I said before, the system is the constraint. The individual clinicians, the GPs themselves, I know a lot of GPs and they're drowning and they're doing their absolute best with what they've got. But I do also wonder whether, one of the things that I see time and time again in people who feel that they're doing a good job of managing a long-term condition is that it was not the kind of initial healthcare appointments which were the things that fixed them. When I say fix them, I mean change their approach. And it was actually being heard, having the space. And it's that space, I think, it's the 10 minutes does not allow for a significant amount of exploration of what is important to an individual person. 10 minutes isn't a significant amount of time to be able to understand the complex reasons that someone might be experiencing worse or longer lasting pain. And as you said, it was the person who could give you 45 minutes rather than the person who could give you 10 minutes where real change began to happen. And I think what you said before, earlier earlier kind of transferring to a different part of healthcare that could be potentially more of an opportunity to begin really deeply working on the things that are going to help.
I'll put somebody else into the mix as well, is the pharmacists. We had a great pharmacist come into our group twice to talk about medications and things, because we had people who's refused medication reviews for years because they're scared that they're going to take them off the pills or whatever. And he came in, and what we did initially, we just had an initial chat around it, and then he came back a couple of months later. And what we did was we got people to write down questions for him and gave them in before he came to the meeting. And it was brilliant. It really allayed a lot of fears. And it's simple, like people saying, oh, you're giving me smaller tablets, you have the cheaper option and blah, blah, blah. And as he said, technology in medicine is moving so quickly. You might not need the big size of a 10 pence tablet. You might only need the smaller one, but they're better for you. They're better for reduced knock-on conditions and things like that. And pharmacists have a great role to play in helping people understand about the medications. For me, it's just it needs to be a combination of people.
And I agree. I mean, the service that I work for, it has doctors, it has psychologists, it has physiotherapists, it's got occupational therapists, it's got pharmacists, and each of them are playing an essential role. Often it feels like we're all trying to make sure that we are singing from the same hymn sheet, so we're often kind of relaying very similar messages, but from a very slightly different perspective. But I think having that expert guidance from somebody whose entire job is related to the pharmaceutical side of things, it does add a kind of additional layer of reassurance, knowledge, expertise, and kind of validation that this person is a person who can really genuinely answer the questions in a way that I'm not a prescriber, I'm not a pharmacist, I don't have any involvement in medication, and I can talk to people about their feelings and their thoughts about their medication, but I don't give them advice because that's someone with specialist training and knowledge's job, And I think you're right, that kind of multidisciplinary approach to pain management is essential.
One of the best things that we've done with our group members is because there's a footstep around communication with people, communication especially with GP type surgeries and things like that. And we get our pain support group members, if they need to, people won't go to the doctors because they don't feel listened to. Some of the stories that I've heard is horrendous, to be honest. Like it's all in your head and this, that and other. But what we tell them to do is write down what they want, what it is, how it's making them feel, how it's affecting them. And it's when they do that, because you can go in, you can get the white coat syndrome and clam up and all sorts of things like that. And this is what I started doing, and then some in our pain group do that. It's the difference in the communications is massive. They actually feel. One lady, she got fed up of going to the doctors because she was told you're in pain because you're overweight. And she says, no, I'm overweight because I'm in pain. And several doctors had told her that. And she just says, I hate going there. All they tell me to do is lose weight, but I've got very limited mobility. And so we sat down and said, what do you got her to write things down, what she wanted to. And it was a Monday morning. She was in one of our 8-week courses. And she was going to the doctors in the early afternoon. She texted me 4 p.m. Darrell, I can't believe it. I've got this scan, I've got that scan, I've got that. She says, I actually felt listened to, and it was like unbelievable. She couldn't believe it.
I think there is something to this. There's a couple of things. So the first one is I often say to people, there are plenty of people who are overweight who don't have any pain, and there are plenty of people who are not overweight who do. And it's a kind of too simple, too reductionist explanation. And yes, it could play a role in some people's cases. But if it was the be all and end all of someone's pain, then why isn't everyone that's overweight suffering long-term pain?
Weight gain does come with, for me, lack of mobility. I put 2.5 stone on from what I used to be. And it's just simply because I'm not being active, and then you start comfort eating and stuff like that. And
Vicious cycle, isn't it?
it's that, yeah, you get into that vicious cycle, George. And I think that's brilliant what you've just said. If being overweight was your pain, why isn't everybody who's overweight in pain? And it's a much used word, and it's not one of my favourite words, but if we took a step back and used a more holistic look at things, I know some people think it has a different connotation, but for me, if we made it person-centred, look at the person, what's going off. When I have a back flare-up, George, I've got to the point now, I ask myself 4 or 5 questions. First thing is, what have I been doing? What have I been eating? What have I been drinking? What environment have I been in? And what else is there? What physical stuff have I been trying to do, should I say? Because it's same as that environment. That's if you're in a stressful, toxic environment, your nervous system's up like that. Your pain, when your nervous system's hyper, your pain increases, and I don't immediately think it's, oh, my back pain, give me a tablet. My first questions are, what have I been doing? What have I been eating? What have I been drinking? What environment have I been in? What else? And I'll keep asking myself a question. And after a while, I started noticing patterns to my flare-ups. So that's when I adapted things.
And I think this is one of the things that's interesting is that actually when I ask people what they feel has triggered their flare-ups, they often kind of are very zoomed in on a small number of factors. And I
It's
think
often not the injury itself.
no, it's often, well, actually it's now Saturday, and on Thursday I had a terrible night's sleep, and then on Friday I had to go and do something that made me feel uncomfortable, or I was around people that I feel obligated to. And then because of that, I went and got a fast food for my dinner because I didn't have time and I was feeling low, and then my mood dipped. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. All of these factors are what's contributing. It's not, oh, just that I must have injured my back without noticing it. And
For
I think what,
me, I had a pattern of because I can't eat bread. That really affects me. And I even when I had a bad flare up one day or over a number of days, I'm thinking, where's this come from? Where has this come from? I was frustrated because I was thinking I've done everything right for the previous 4 or 5 days. And then I went back a further day and I've done exactly what you just said. I'd had bad sleep, I'd had snack foods, I grabbed a sandwich here, a sandwich there. And I went back even further and I thought, yes, one particular day I was grabbing sandwiches here, snack foods, crisps, things like that. I'd probably had 1 pint of water, which I have first thing in the morning. And it was, I just looked at it and I thought, I've eaten nothing but junk food, processed foods all that day. And I just thought, that's where it's come from.
yeah, it's never quite as simple as we want it to be. It's never, oh, well, there is a direct line between this behavior or action yesterday and how I feel today. It's a much wider picture. And I think when people zoom out, they can often see the things that were maybe the genesis of the start of things falling
It can
apart
be
just
even
a
the
little bit.
smallest thing, George. It can really can be, and it can be that small you don't it doesn't even register.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I agree.
what I started doing was, and I recommend this for anybody who's listening, is making a note of the patterns or making a note of what trigger for me, what triggers my back pain. Making a note of things, as I say, what foods did I eat, how much water have I drunk, what have I physically done today. It can get a bit deep at times, but for me, it's just maybe 1 or 2 words wrote down. What have I just to note patterns that happen before your flare ups, because there will be a pattern,
Yeah, I often say
even
to
if it's an
people,
argument with your partner or somebody, and you're still, as the saying goes, still got face on with them for 3 or 4 days later. Then all of a sudden, you're still hypersensitive nervous system, and your pain kicks in.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's not just about looking at how the pain feels. I don't think that in itself, on its own, is that valuable. It's looking at multiple factors and trying to figure out where those might be patterns rather than just, well, this is my pain on that day and that's my pain on this day. I just wanted to return to something that you said before about communicating in healthcare appointments, because I often tell people that that communications in healthcare interactions are a two-way thing, and that actually you need to go into those appointments with an agenda. You need to know what you want to get out of that, and you need to go in and kind of have in your head, well, at the end of this appointment, I need to understand the answer to this question. And the answer could be something that I don't want, as long as I understand why that is. But you need to have kind of realistic expectations of that appointment. And you need to understand that your role in guiding what you want, rather than just attending and saying, here's the problem, now you work it out and now you fix it. You need to go and you need to establish,
Yeah,
this is what I'll
it's like
feel is
we've had this
worthwhile.
discussion, and people have said, well, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, and I need to talk about this, this, and this. And what I say to them is, what is the one single most important thing that you want? What is the one single most important condition, feeling, or whatever? It's no use saying, I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got this, and they need to talk about this. It's as the GP say, they can only talk about one thing. So what is that one thing you want to talk about?
You
And
need to guide it. You need to be in
yeah, what
control
is the
of it.
most important thing that you want to talk about? You want the answer, potential answer to,
Yeah.
or help with.
Or at least have an understanding of why
Yeah.
there isn't a simple answer to.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree. These are your appointments, and you're the person who needs to guide them and needs to be responsible for how they go, because otherwise people are going to go down the route that they think they're going to go down their agenda. And actually, it's your appointment. The agenda that should be being followed is your agenda. And sometimes that's not feasible, but at least understanding why it's not feasible is helpful.
Yeah.
We've touched on this at various points, but what do you feel needs to change in either healthcare, education, society, all of the above, about the way that people are approaching and are being supported when they're living with long-term conditions or persistent pain?
People who don't live with persistent pain, their perception of pain is completely different to somebody who's living with it. I try and explain it to people of what's the very worst toothache you've ever had. Can you remember it? Yeah. I'll say, well, just imagine that. And then you go to the doctors and they give you painkillers and then it doesn't work and they give you more and they don't work and they give you stronger ones and they don't work and they give you even stronger ones and they don't work. And then you go back again and say, I'm sorry, you can't have any more. You're on the maximum of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, imagine living with that pain 24/7. And that does tend to make people, oh, right. But as pain as a long-term condition, I still think a lot of people think, well, it's only a bit of pain, get a tablet and you'll be okay. But we've proved you can have whatever tablets you want. You can have the strongest tablets available and they don't always work. Somebody said to me, which really made me think, you're on all these tablets and you're still in pain. Are they working?
Mm-hmm.
A simple comment like that, George. And that made me think, are they really working? Is there something? That's what got me down the lifestyle and different changes. My dad, bless him, when he was alive, he always used to say, there's a cure for everything grows in the ground. They've just not found it yet. Strangely enough, when we had a nutritionist come in, she's come in twice, and she was brilliant. She said, I'm not going to come in and say, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat other. All she did was suggest little swaps and or add a vegetable into a meal, or like in a breakfast, add a handful of berries in. And we did the 2 week recap, and several of the ladies, they all says, I've noticed some difference in the way I'm feeling because they're eating a couple more veg, or they've had some extra berries in the porridge, or cornflakes or things like that. But it's a tough one, because how do you make people understand what pain is? But the more patients are involved in the service, the better the service will be.
Mm-hmm.
I've had conversations with healthcare professionals and GPs and things like that, and they've said, we've learned so much from you. Little things like you've picked up on, the little things that they would never even have thought about, that's having big effects.
Yeah, it feels like a really recurrent theme of our conversation is the simple, repeatable behavior changes, when done well, when done frequently, when made into habits, can have such a profound difference in people's lives. And I think a lot of the time people kind of poo-poo those things as being toxic positivity, but as we said before, it's not one of them that's helpful. It's when we have multiple people who are doing slightly different things, but they're all in aim of something that's similar, and they're doing them again and again and again. That's when people often see benefits with these things, is when they go, right, what individually works for me and how do I make it into a lifestyle rather than just a thing that I do every
Yeah,
now and then.
I'll be honest, George, when you talk about toxic positivity, I can really relate to that, because I've had people say to me, well, it's all right for you, you don't know, there's nothing wrong with you. And I say, I don't even want to get to the point of where telling you where I was,
Mm-hmm.
and where where my pain still is. But, and I'll be honest, there've been days at the pain group, and I've said to them, I said, I actually feel a fraud, because people look at me and think, well, look at him, there's nothing wrong with him, he's up, he's positive, he's this, he's that, he's other. And I feel there's times I've said to them, we did a round table one and how things are, blah, blah, blah. And I actually said to them, I says, I actually feel a bit of a fraud, to be honest, today. I says, my pain's at a tolerable level. It never goes away, but I'm actually feeling okay. And everybody's in a bit of a downer. And they all spun round and said to me, don't be an idiot, Darrell. If we see somebody that can be like you are at the moment, surely that gives us inspiration to be able to think there's a way that we can get to something like that.
Hope and
Yeah,
recognition that actually people can see improvements. And I
yeah,
think it's interesting because you used the term imposter syndrome earlier on in our chat, and it's not fraudulent to feel that you're managing better, it's progress. And yet, when people are really struggling and you're not struggling anymore, I think, as you said, that can be inspirational, that can provide optimism to those people. Well, this is where I was and this is where I am now. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to start having these conversations, is because there's too much narrative of inevitable decline. There's too much narrative of there's nothing that can be done and no one understands these things. And actually, there are so many people who are living well alongside their symptoms. It doesn't mean that they're cured. It doesn't mean that they've gone away.
no,
But it does mean
it's
that they've found a way through the maze a bit and that they're still working on that.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. When people say what's your pain out of 10, I say that's an irrelevant scale now, because my 4 will be somebody else's 8,
Yeah.
because my body's used to it, it's adapted to it. So I'll say that's an irrelevant measure. I'm still in pain. Because I've been sat a while talking with you, I've been moving and trying to get things moving. There's days I can't stand up for more than 30 seconds. There's days I can't sit down for 30 seconds. There's days I can't do either. And there's days when I'm crawling about. And I have my flare-up plan. And I'll pull back for a week or two. I'll do 80% less of what I normally do. And my mindset is, this has got me through it before. I know, just bite your lip and work through it and you'll be okay.
Recognizing the temporary and fluid nature of what you're experiencing, that sometimes there will
I
be
call
good.
it a blip in the road now, George, as opposed
Yeah.
to a major catastrophe, because I did so much catastrophizing. I said something to somebody the other day which surprised me, and I'm probably more excited about my life and future now than I have been for 10, 15 years.
Which is such a brilliant thing to be able to say. And I think what you said before about catastrophizing, I often say that one of the big steps is being able to contextualize how you're feeling when you're feeling worse, rather than catastrophizing it. Being able to say, this is a blip, this is temporary, rather than, oh my God, this is the new normal and my life is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I think when people feel that they have a bit more control and a bit more purpose and a bit more
Direction.
yeah, that's exactly it, then actually that is part of treatment for pain. And the challenge is that other people can provide guidance, but that part of the treatment does ultimately originate with you.
There's something that people have said to me. It's like, pain rules your life. Well, now I've been able to flip it. I'm ruling my life. Pain's not ruling my life. I'm ruling my life now. And it's the communication part. When people have asked to me, you mentioned earlier about communicating about your pain, and I'm not afraid to cancel appointments at the very last minute. I've had taxis outside my house and I've said, sorry, can't do it. And I think somebody in Live Well with Pain told me a brilliant way of describing your situation if you're in pain. And I just say now, if people say, how are you doing? I say, I'm in a bit of pain today, but I'm just taking my time to manage it. And then for me, that gets the understanding over to the person who's not in pain, that you're in pain and you're having to manage it. And it somewhat takes the pressure off them as well.
Sure. What societal narratives around pain do you feel are harmful and would benefit from changing? I think we've already touched on some of these in the general conversation, but just your kind of thoughts on it in a kind of collected way rather than spread out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Societal perception of pain is you have some pain, you take a tablet, it disappears. The question is, what happens then when it doesn't disappear? That is what I would say 90% of people who don't suffer persistent chronic pain, that's the misunderstanding that they have. That was mine in the early days. It's like, oh, some stronger painkillers will get rid of it, then I can get back to work. Anybody who's never had persistent pain, you get an headache, you take some tablets, it disappears. That's your experience of pain. Or you might, like I did, shattered all my foot and my ankle jumping over a fence, taking a shortcut. I was in agony. 6 months off work, had to learn to walk again, but the pain was excruciating. But after a while, that pain had gone.
Yeah.
And up until my back problem, that was the worst pain I've ever experienced. I had to have morphine and everything, but at the end of the day, it went, George. Now, this one isn't going. It's still here. I still live with it. And that is the difference for me in the general public perception of pain as opposed to a person living with persistent pain.
This is it. It's when the simple linear
It's a
stuff.
misconception.
Yeah. Well, it's a conception that's based in the experiences that we have, as you've so wonderfully demonstrated with your having an injury which took a prolonged period of time to recover, but ultimately did recover, versus the experience that you find yourself in now. Is that one of the things that I think is really challenging about persistent pain is that it doesn't fit our model and our experience of what has happened with injuries and pain in the past. It's something different.
That's
And as you
exactly
say,
it, George. Exactly it.
when something isn't helping that you feel should, the big question is, what can I do that's different? Because this is clearly different.
Yeah, that's exactly it, George. Exactly it.
Are there any other messages that you'd like people who are experiencing persistent pain to hear that you feel you haven't already said?
Yeah, it's the myth of when you're in pain, you don't do anything, you sit about, you rest up. For me, that is completely wrong. For me, you've got to try and keep moving, even if it's the smallest of moves. It seems like when I'm laid on the floor, and I can be laid on the floor anything between 3 weeks and 4 months, and I've had each one. I'll do gentle knee rolls, lift my knees up, and even if I just move my knees 2 or 3 inch, it's getting some form of movement. Or I'll do knee to chest, alternate legs very slowly. If you can just keep some form of movement and look at what you're eating.
And I guess, do you think there's something in that where what you were talking about is kind of gentle, regular movement, but also there's something in kind of trying to make sure that even when you're at your lowest, you're trying to understand how to move forward more generally. So it's not just the movement as in gentle exercises, but also the where do I go next?
I call them micro wins.
Yeah.
Not small wins, micro wins. When I had the stroke, I had to stop up at my mum's. I was sleeping 18 hours a day, and I had both no movement and complete wipe out from the stroke. I struggled to walk, and I had to, if I walked a minute, it might have been 2 or 3 yards. And what I was doing that every other day. My GP told me to walk for 10 hours, then 10 hours the following day. And I did it the first day, and I looked and I thought, I will never ever get back if I do another 10 hours. So I just kept it to that distance for a week or two. And then I thought, right, how can I extend it? And I went onto so micro, and I'll add 15 seconds on. And that 15 seconds might have been 2 steps. And the first time I did it, we joke about it in the support group and with other people. I was on the side of the road, I got walking stick, and I'm going, yes, yes, yes.
Brilliant.
Because to me, I'd made progress.
Yeah.
And if I can do it once, I can do it twice. And we talk in the pain group about setting goals and getting active. And when you have a flare up, do take things down to the absolute smallest thing that you can do.
Yeah.
Micro wins, micro goals,
Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
it's one step.
Yeah, I say this to people all the time. You know, we need to find a tolerable baseline, which is negligibly easy, and then gradually progress that. Because the point of pacing is not just to get stuck where you are. The point is to find what you can progress from and progress from that. And I often talk to people about celebrating small victories, but actually, I
Yeah,
really like the idea of micro wins because it's the language suggests even smaller than small victories, and actually tiny baby steps are often the thing that's required. But when you zoom out and look at the progress over long periods of time, you're smashing it compared to what you were doing before.
yeah.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked that you wanted to discuss?
Not as I can think of, George. It's been a wonderful chat with you.
Good. I do want to revisit at some point the work that you're doing in the justice system. And I think it probably is something that would be really helpful to talk about in more detail another time, because we've already been chatting for nearly an hour and a half, and that's probably long enough to be sat down. But that is something that I definitely like to revisit. I think what's been really great is that the story you've told has been so relatable. There's so many themes in what you've said that I think so many people who are living with pain will recognize. And the fact that you have both experienced those kind of depths of feeling hopeless and also figuring out how to move in another direction, that is utterly valuable for people who are in that kind of space of there's nothing, because there is things that can help.
There is,
It's
and
just how you do them.
and if I could say one final thing, it's what we've just been on about. As you said, the lifestyle things, just do them as small as you can,
Yeah.
consistently, as
Yeah.
small as you can, even if it's 1 or 2 steps out the front door.
If what Darrell has shared today has resonated with you and you'd like to connect, you can find links in the show notes. Thank you for listening to the Conditions for Recovery. I'm George, and I'll see you in the next episode.